Hi. We couldn't find the time to. I look so funny. We couldn't find the time to do the presentation, and since we obviously care so much about our grade, we made this video for you, for your birthday.
So you can at least see the presentation, even
Yes.
though we can't show it to you personally.
Yes, but we will do our best because we love psychology. Woo! And there's Andre. Depression! Woo!
I'm Antonia.
I'm Andre.
And I'm Nella.
Our contents are introduction, what is depression?
The depression quiz,
Symptoms of depression.
Looking at statistics.
a video,
Research number 1, casted all in 2003.
Research number 2, the Depression Network Study in London.
further research like the bipolar disorder and the twin studies.
And finally, molecular genetic studies.
Okay, so what is depression? Depression is a state of low mood. It is a aversion to activity that can have negative effect on a person's thoughts, behavior, feelings, worldview, physical well-being. You can cut now. We found a depression quiz where you can test if you have depression or not.
But we won't do it because we are not in class.
Symptoms of depression are feeling sad, anxious, empty, hopeless, worried, helpless, worthless, guilty, irritable, hurt, and restless. Depressed people may have lost interest in activities that were once enjoyable for them. They may have problems concentrating, remembering details, or making decisions. They may have a loss of appetite or overeating, which is the opposite. They may think about committing suicide. And insomnia, which is not being able to sleep, might also be a side effect. Excessive sleeping, loss of energy, or pains of digestive problems can also be symptoms of depression. I found some statistics which show the percentage of depressed people in certain countries. The highest percentage was found in Manchester, United Kingdom. Goes down through Europe, but also Seattle, Washington, 6.3% in the States. And if a parent or sibling had depression before you, then the chance of getting depression as well is 1.5 to 3.5 chances higher. So the question is there a gene for depression? Because some researchers have suggested that there might be a genetic link between getting depression in families or not. And Nella's going to talk about that topic now.
Hi, I'm going to talk about the researches now. So like we know, human beings reproduce sexually, which means that the genetic information of the two parents is fertilized in an egg. The genetic information is controlled in chromosomes. There are 23 pairs in each pair of a chromosome from each parent. The offspring then inherits these chosen genes, which are thought to be a huge factor of the development in physical and behavioral looks. But environmental factors can also play a big influence in the way an organism develops. So this is a video of Dr. Daniel Pine, and we would have watched it in class, but we didn't do the presentation in class. So the video basically speaks about depression and anxiety, and the doctor talks about his view on the whole situation. He talks about studies of genes and mental disorders and how important they are and can show patterns in relationships. He believes that 30 to 50% is related to genes and 70 to 50% is related to environmental factors. He believes also that individual influences of a certain gene are very small and they are more likely to be closer as predictions to further researches than actual knowledge. Now I will talk about the serotonin transporters, as they play a very big role in this process. Serotonin nerve pathways are involved in controlling mood, emotion, aggression, sleep, and anxiety. The serotonin transporters are responsible for the reuptake of serotonin in the presynaptic gap, where it signals the adjacent neuron and binds it with its receptive site. So now we'll talk about our first research, which is Caspi et al. 2003. This research, upon it was conducted, it caused a phenomenon all over the media. The first publication was actually in the New York Times and the Science magazine. This gene officially is named 5-HTT gene, and one or two short alleles of this gene can moderate a person's likelihood of experiencing depression after stressful events. Also, in later researches, it was shown that this gene is also related to drinking, suicide, autism, panic disorders, etc. The article spoke about the moderating susceptibility to depression. Right here we have a picture of the binding of the serotonin to the receptive sites. As we can see, the serotonin is released here into the synaptic gap where the reuptake of the transporters happens. And then it is binded to the receptive sites of the serotonin and the serotonin neurotransmitters. Now we're going to talk about what long versus short alleles actually means. So long alleles produce more protein, and what this actually means is that these genes have different lengths of the sequences in the gene's regulatory system. The short alleles cause decreased gene expression and fewer serotonin transporters in the membrane of the cell. This makes the reuptake of the serotonin reduced, which can cause depression after stressful events. So now when we're looking here, it's actually cut off here. Wait, it's fine. It's fine. We can see that this is the translated region, and this is the short and long alleles. So the short allele causes the serotonin reuptake to be slower and much reduced. We know that serotonin is involved in our mood. The frequency of the long allele is 57%, and the frequency of the short allele, which is the one that causes depression, is 43%. One long and one short allele might cause depression, where two long alleles won't cause depression, for sure. Well, not for sure, but when looking at genetics, there are still environmental factors that are due, but yeah. The next research which I will talk about is the Depression Network Study. This research was printed in the magazine The Independent. What happened was DNA was taken from 971 sibling pairs with European ancestry and who were at some point affected by recurring depression. The aim was to identify areas of the DNA that can contain genes of susceptibility to major depression. The way that this research was conducted was that scientists used identifiable variations within the DNA, which are also called the markers. Their use is to find pieces of DNA that are consistently passed on to the affected pair. Once this region is identified, it is looked into with more detail. 839 families, of which 971 siblings, were tested. Unaffected siblings, and of course the parents, were invited to the research and were interviewed on the assessment of the presence of any mental diseases. They were asked to rate the presence of various symptoms during their worst 46 weeks of depression. 2,412 was the total number of participants. 2,164 were diagnosed with recurrent depression. 1,447 had severe depression. 827 had very severe depression. For all of the groups named, different DNA and obviously blood tests were taken. Results showed that 214 genes in region 3 had a certain link with depression. Chromosomes 3, which is 3p2526, had the strongest link, and therefore further research was conducted on it. It was found that if a parent had depression, the offspring had a 20% chance of being majorly depressed at some point in their life, and a 4% chance would have severe depression. The research was also replicated in the United States. Pamela Maiden, who was a leader in this research group, said that what's remarkable that both groups found exactly the same region. This research showed that we may be vulnerable to depression, but we are not destined to it. Now I will talk about further research that has a link to depression. The first research is about the bipolar disorder. The bipolar disorder is a mental disorder marked by alternating periods of elation and depression. If the parent has the bipolar disorder, there is a 25% chance of development of some kind of clinical depression in the child's life. If a sibling has the bipolar disorder, there is an 8 to 18 times bigger chance of development in their other sibling twin. When looking at twin studies, we can also see a very obvious link with depression. When looking at identical twins or monozygotic twins, we can see that if the one is diagnosed, 76% that the other will be diagnosed as well. If they are raised apart, there is still a 67% chance that the other twin will be diagnosed with depression as well. When looking at fraternal twins or dizygotic twins, we can see that if the one is diagnosed, there is only a 19% chance. So we can't make any clear conclusions about this.
Reverse genetics is a study of certain traits in people's personalities and associating them with the chromosomes and genes that occur in the person's DNA. Correlational studies, finally, don't show a cause and effect relationship, but merely test to see if there is a relationship between a certain gene and a certain personality. These genes aren't the only ones that can determine if a person will live their life in depression or not. There are also other types of genes, such as thioanomoamine oxidase A, glucocorticosteroid hormones, which further complicate pathways influencing depression. Environmental factors can also play a big role, so it doesn't solely rely on genes and DNA. And a final piece of advice, don't stress.